masters. So the minimum for me, for a person to practice public relations professionally, should be at least a diploma, and they should look at going forward. And the reason why I say that is, one of the things we need to understand is that public relations should become a management function. In fact, it is a management function, but in a lot of organizations, they subsume it under different departments. So sometimes it's under marketing, sometimes it's under HR, sometimes it's even under legal affairs. But PR is growing to that point where we see that unless PR also sits at the table together with HR, together with accounting and finance and everybody, organizations actually suffer because they don't take PR seriously. And I can give you a lot of examples of organizations that have not taken public relations seriously and have gotten into trouble. I don't know if it will be okay to mention brands, but in the last few years, in the last few months, for example, we are seeing brands like Midland Savings and Loans get into trouble. If you look at it, it's basically public relations gone wrong.
Okay.
So they were not able to take care of a stakeholder group well. And then the issue escalated. And look at the cost that the organization has had to incur. If you are taking public relations seriously, then public relations should be at the table where decisions are being made. And for public relations to be at the table where decisions are being made, the person should be at the same pedigree as all the other functions in the organization. So I say that the minimum diploma, yes, but go as high as you can.
I see. Now, you compared public relations with accounting. You and I would agree to the fact that you need to be strong on numbers to be able to become an accountant. Yeah. Now, what do public relations professionals do specially that somebody who hasn't got at least a diploma will not be able to do?
Okay, so public relations people, like I said at the beginning, they try to build and maintain mutually beneficial relationships between organizations and their publics. Now, if you are not a trained person in public relations, you may not even know who these stakeholders that you are dealing with are. For a lot of organizations, it's just the customers that we deal with. But in public relations, we are looking at relationships such as government relationships, so regulators. We are looking at customers. We are looking at the community in which the organization is situated. We are looking at internal stakeholders as well. And
employees.
Without an understanding of what public relations is and what public relations seeks to do, you may think that public relations is all about speaking to the media in times of, especially for a lot of organizations, crisis. But to build relationships, you need to understand the basis of what these relationships are. How do I maintain this relationship? Because not all stakeholder groupings are at the same level. There are some that you may choose to hold off a bit because they may not have any serious issue with the organization, and so you may choose to hold off a bit in communicating with them. But there are some that you need to manage very well. So it brings us to, for example, the skill sets. Like you said, an accountant needs to be strong on numbers. A public relations person has to have an eye for detail, an understanding of how business works and who impacts a business. And you may think that, oh, anybody can do that. But until you are trained to know that this is a stakeholder grouping that could cause trouble for us, that is a stakeholder grouping that we are okay with now, you may think that, oh, anybody can do this. And usually people confuse public relations with media relations. Basically, media relations is about also building mutually beneficial relationships between organizations and the media, because the media They are the carriers of the messages that we send across as organizations. But when you focus on that stakeholder group alone, you are in trouble.
Okay, we will come back to talk about that. But before we do, let's take a quick break and then we'll be back. So viewers, we still talking career education in public relations, and we are here with Ms. Paulina Kuranchie. We take a short break. When we come back, the show continues. Welcome back. Now we're still talking career education and public relations, and we're here with Ms. Paulina Kuranchie, a faculty member at the Ghana Institute of Journalism. Madam, to what extent does public relations go beyond just protecting the image of an organization?
Okay. So the import of public relations is to build mutually beneficial relationships between an organization and its public. Now, these mutually beneficial relationships that we build could protect the image and the reputation of the organization, but it is also aimed at ensuring that the organization, for example, has peace of mind to operate in the area in which they operate.
Okay, so what link does public relations have with marketing?
Okay. Usually, when we talk about public relations, marketing and advertising. We put it all under integrated marketing communications. And whilst there are some similarities, there are also differences. So public relations is different from marketing in that whereas public relations is looking at building mutually beneficial relationships, which may not necessarily be transactional. Usually, marketing is looking at transactional relationships. And by transactional relationships, I mean that in marketing, we are looking at if I offer this product or service to this community, what do I get in return? But in public relations, usually we are looking at just building the relationships without really looking at what the organization may get in return. Yes, there are things that organizations get in return for doing good public relations, a good image, a good reputation, and so forth and so on, which could translate into
profit.
Yes, profits much later on. But that is not our main goal at the beginning of any public relations strategy.
Okay.
What we are looking at is trying to ensure that we build a mutually beneficial relationship. And for example, we are in this community and we decide that we will build a borehole for the community. It does not necessarily mean that the community benefits from something that AAU does immediately. So let's say that AAU holds lectures and we don't expect that students in the community will come to AAU and pay school fees. No. But we built the borehole for the community knowing that when the people in the community are at peace, we have legitimacy to do our business in peace.
You earlier submitted that public relations deals with the publics, and you mentioned the employees as one of the publics. Yeah. Now, when it comes to this, doesn't it overlap with human resources?
Yes, what HR does.
Yeah.
Yes and no. For example, in a lot of organizations, HR is supposed to take care of, say, internal communication.
Okay.
But we recommend, public relations practitioners recommend that HR should do that in conjunction with public relations, because if you're able to build good relationships with the people in the organizations, they become your mouthpiece. You don't need to do an advert. You get it? And because in PR we are looking at reputation building, brand building, and we're looking at just building relationships that benefits both the organization and the people they deal with. And HR is concerned with taking care of the human resource in the organization. We advise that they do it hand in hand. Again, there are, for example, CSR, corporate social responsibility activities that PR people undertake for staff, which HR may take over to do, but we ask that to do it together. For example, in how you treat your staff, for example, is corporate social responsibility. Usually when we talk about corporate social responsibility, people are thinking, oh, we want to do philanthropy in this community or that community. But even how you treat the staff in the organization is corporate social responsibility. So for example, in organizations where they have mothers with young children, the organization may decide that we will have a crèche in on the premise of the organization. And HR will think that, oh, when we do it, it will help the mothers stay at work, because then their minds are not on their children back home. But it is a CSR activity, and CSR basically falls in the purview of public relations. So HR people and PR people will work hand in hand in the same way that we work hand in hand with all the other departments in the organization.
We will talk more details about that. But does one necessarily have to have a degree? And if it is so, does it have to be in public relations to be able to practice public relations?
I recommend that, yes, get a degree in public relations. In GIJ, where I teach, we have diploma programs in communication studies. And then we have a degree in communication studies with public relations specialization, and then we have a master's in public relations. The reason we recommend that you get training in public relations is that just like accountancy, you can't get an accountant who is not trained to go and take care of the books of an organization. So why should PR be different? So get training in public relations. Again, public relations is a management function. On the management table, you need people who understand the issues, who understand the business of business, and who understand the business of PR and how this feeds into the growth and the expansion of the business to sit at the table. If you take anybody who is not trained in PR, they may not be able to see the signs and the signals, and they may not even be able to identify the stakeholders that you need to deal with in the organization.
So can somebody who has a degree but not in PR also become a public relations practitioner?
Why not? You can. You know the reason I say that, but you will need to get training in public relations. However you do it, it's up to you. For example, for me, my first degree is in physics.
Okay.
And then my master's is in public relations. So with any degree, you can do public relations, but you will need to get training in public relations, because public relations goes beyond the media relations that usually when we think about public relations, we think about. It is more strategic. You need to be able to understand the objectives of the business and where they are going, and to plan public relations campaigns and activities that tie into the objectives of the business to be able to build these mutually beneficial relationships that we're talking about.
Yeah. You mentioned that you can practice public relations with any other degree.
No, now, you can't practice public relations with any other degree. You can have any other degree, but you will need to get training in public relations.
So the training will come later.
Yes.
But for starters, you haven't got the training. You only have a degree, but not in public relations. So you can go ahead. Or you need the training before you...
Yes, you need the training before you practice. We're talking about a professional. You see, usually when we talk public relations, people are thinking, oh, they are the people who speak to the media in times of crisis and so forth and so on. Now, the moment you reduce public relations to media relations, then anybody can do it. Anybody can stand in front of a camera and speak on behalf of an organization. But when you are thinking of PR as a management function, where you need to understand strategy to be able to practice, then any degree is not enough. You will have to get a training.
So, not any degree. That's when somebody is holding, he or she will be able to practice public relations.
Professionally, no.
So if I have a degree in journalism, I will not be able to, without training, I will not be able to practice public relations.
In GIJ, for example, for our first and second years, our students do a bit of public relations and journalism, because it's a degree in communication studies. And then they specialize much later on. But if you're a journalist, you're a journalist. If you're a PR person, you're a PR person. It looks like, oh, it's the same thing. But let me tell you something. I teach at the master's level too. And at the master's level, what we see basically is that we see a lot of journalists. And in Ghana, when people think of public relations, they think of media relations. So organizations like to appoint journalists to speak on behalf of their organizations. Then when the people go in, they realize that, wow, this is very different from what we thought PR is. Because like I'm saying, it deals with a lot of strategy. It is not just, oh, I wrote a story and I sent it to this media house and it has been published. It goes beyond that. So how do you deal with the strategy? So what we find is that a lot of our students who get, journalism students, who get appointments to do PR for organizations, come back to school to learn public relations. And when they do, they realize that, wow, this is totally different from what we thought PR actually is.
So how is education in public relations theory and practice balanced?
Okay. what we try to do, at least in my faculty, is to balance theory and practice. We put it as 60-40. So they do 60% theory and then they do 40% practical. For me, for example, today, my students have been pitching. That is the practical side of what I teach them, the theory. So I teach you that this is how to put together a public relations plan. Then I tell you to come and pitch. And I brought industry practitioners to come and vet what the students are doing. So it gives them a practical feel. So let's say you are a public relations consultant, you are going to pitch for a job. How do you pitch it? So I teach you the theory, but you actually have to come and practice it for us to see. And we have industry practitioners who come in and judge these students so that they can improve on what they do. Some of my other colleagues also run public relations simulation companies for students. So you set up a company as a PR firm, and then you provide a service for a certain target group. And like I'm saying, we bring in industry practitioners to come and see what these students are doing, whether or not the theory is marrying the practice, or the theory is somewhere else and the practice is also somewhere else.
Now, are there opportunities for internships, coursework, and
yes,
such like?
Yes, yes, yes. The good thing about public relations is that every sector of the economy needs public relations. Those in the health sector need public relations. Governments, they need public relations. Think about it, technology, whichever area you are looking at, they need public relations. So we are able to place our students in organizations that have public relations departments. So they learn what it means when we talk about all of the theory. They go to the field to actually practice and see how it is like. So we place them in organizations to actually practice and see how it is like.
Okay, now let's talk about the career opportunities in public relations. What are they?
Numerous opportunities. In public relations, there are, like I said before, every organization needs PR. And usually organizations don't see it until they get into a crisis. But, and I mentioned the Midland Savings and Loans saga, for example. At the start, organizations would think, oh, we are into banking. Why do we need a public relations practitioner? But I believe strongly that if they had a PR person in the organization, the policeman would not even have beaten the woman the way he did. Because PR would have intervened. Why? PR would have intervened because sorry, what we do is try to build mutually beneficial relationships. So the woman comes in, the service is down. How did we speak to the woman? What did we do? You get it? Now, the moment we think that, oh, our business is finance, so we don't need PR, then somebody will manhandle the customer, and then the whole business will be in trouble. And that's the point where organizations think, oh, we need a PR. But even before the crisis actually happens, you need somebody who is maintaining the relationships, who is building mutually beneficial relationships, so you don't get into trouble. So in every sector, for example, I run a consultancy, EPR. All we do is focus on tech startups. So we do public relations for tech startups alone. I have colleagues who do fashion PR. So all they do is focus on fashion brands and what PR activities they can do for them. I have colleagues who are into industry, manufacturing, and so forth and so on. There are others in hospital, there are others in NGOs.
So if I had a degree in public relations and I applied to your consultancy firm, what would I be doing there?
You will be providing public relations service for tech startups.
So what are these services?
Yes, sometimes they, for example, need awareness about their product or service. There is an app called Ankle Fitter. Have you heard about it before?
No.
How does anybody get to know about it if somebody does not create or raise awareness and give the brand visibility? So when you come in, you may be doing publicity, something to do with publicity. You may be doing something to do with community relations. You may be doing education, public education.
Okay.
There are various functions of public relations, and then the almighty and well-known media relations. So we are holding an event. We need to get media people there. How do we get them there? PR people help all of these things happen.
So how many PR people can an organization have at one time?
It depends on the size of the organization and what they do. I have been in organizations where there's a big PR department, and then I've been in organizations where there's a very small PR department. It all depends on what the organization does and what they think needs to be done, or what PR needs to do in the organization.
So how many people can a small public relations department accommodate at a time? And how many can a big department also accommodate?
It will be difficult to put numbers to it. The reason I say is, for example, I worked in the Volta River Authority. There was a whole public relations department with somebody in charge of media relations, somebody in charge of publications, somebody in charge of events, somebody in charge of community relations, public education. So how many? Five roles. And all of these people had people under them working.
Okay.
Then I have been in organizations to where I am the PR department. Do you get it? So it will be difficult to put a figure to